kind of quiet, so if anybody wants to move up, because I like the engagement, so.
We can tell.
Yes, so I definitely am going to, give you a lot of information that I've learned in this area, but I also want to hear from you. I've worked with quite a few states in this area, not worked with Montana until recently, but I always do my homework before I come, but homework isn't the same as life experiences, so please fill me in on places where I might be just telling you what the data shows and not necessarily anything else. So, okay. So, first of all, I want to explain the term gender responsive, and I have a couple notes here on my laptop for a few slides just to make sure I correctly report data. That's my professor part of me that doesn't want to screw up data. But first I want to talk about the concept of gender. I'm sure you guys have heard the term gender neutral. Or gender specific, gender responsive. Gender responsive is the latest term really that we're using. Gender neutral was back in the day when people were creating, AA meetings, and then there was one in there that said for the wives, like going way back, that they started saying, oh, you need to make them gender neutral, so they changed wives to spouses. Right? So for the spouses, this chapter is for the spouses. Then we got into gender specific, saying, well, maybe we need to look at specifically what the gender specific needs are for women or men. But that wasn't really enough because that's just identifying what those are, right? Like I was listening to Carolyn there, it was a really good presentation on needs assessment. And to know the needs is one thing, but then to respond to them is the next thing. So that's where the term gender responsive came from. Typically, if you see something that says gender neutral, it probably means male default. And not for any bad reason, right? Because I know in Nevada, where I'm from, we have 13,000 inmates, and just under 12,000 of them are men. So I get it. If we're going to spend a lot of time talking about treatment programs, let's focus on the majority, right? But then we just hand those to women and we try to change the language to be more inclusive, but it really isn't helping them, then we wonder why they're not recovering. And the other thing about women is they are, in many cases, the caregiver. And so if you multiply that, 1,200 women in Nevada, I think ours is about 2.7 kids, that number just went up to closer to 5,000, right? So it's not really about the numbers. We really need to change the way we do treatment. So feel free to, and I also want to acknowledge that I do understand that not everybody in women's facilities in particular identifies as women, that we have that. And so I definitely understand that, and a lot of the program we're doing is to help understand different audiences and how they feel and how they identify and what their needs are. But for the presentation and our discussion today, a lot of this is data that's gone on for 30 years where people identified in these studies as women or females. So I try to use as much as possible the word females instead of necessarily women, because the studies are based on that, and a lot of the studies that I've done and studies that I have read over the years kind of go along those lines. So I will use that terminology, probably males and females. And just a little bit about myself. As an applied researcher, I've been basically in the health and nutrition field before the addictions field. And I got a call in 1995 saying, that we want to add nutrition and physical activity to our drug court program in Nevada. I think it was 1995. And I said, oh, okay, well, it can't be that different from any of the other other nutrition and health and physical activity programs we do. But I learned really quickly that that wasn't true and got really interested in it. Shortly after that, in the late 90s, I got a call from the women's prison saying we're trying to implement more health programs for our women out here. And honestly, they're not getting it. There's one person playing basketball in the gym and everybody else is playing cards, and we just can't get them to utilize the equipment, so can we, contract you to come in? And so I came in and really changed the whole environment for women. Like, they didn't want to play basketball, some of them did, but they wanted something different. So that's really what got me interested in the 90s. But then really quickly, I learned that there was something different about this population that I had not seen anywhere. And I had worked in, gyms, managing health clubs in LA. I'd worked in YMCAs. I worked at the Nevada test site with 13,000 employees trying to be healthy. I'd seen a lot of different populations, but there was something unique about these women when it came to developing programs. And sometimes I would see women come down, I put in some treadmills, for example, and they'd come down and they'd be on the treadmill like 8 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Like, once is enough. Or I would learn that girls would be in their, their space where they live in the prison and throwing up, and their friends would be outside the door, watching for them to make sure to cover them because they were going to the hole, to segregation, if they were caught doing that. And I just started observing all these things and thinking, wow, this is crazy, because it seems to be higher prevalence of these issues than I'd seen before, and really nothing that we're doing is improving this or helping this. So basically, that's kind of how I got started in this. And so I want to talk about a couple things in terms of understanding that women's lives are fundamentally different. And the first couple slides I want to show you are really not my area necessarily, but I studied that as part of what I do because they're fundamentally different, because their pathways to substance use and criminal activity are different. They often call this the trauma to prison pipeline, or the trauma to crime pipeline, or the trauma to addiction pipeline. So I want to talk a little bit about that. In fact, they looked at a study in Missouri with 300 women that were on very, very low risk, okay? And they were on probation, and they were failing probation simply after they went back and looked at all of the reasons why. It's because their basic needs weren't being met. And we're going to see this more and more. There's a lot we can do. I don't know how much you guys do around just basic nutrition and physical activity, but that's the old hierarchy, right? Maslow's hierarchy. It's the bottom line is my physiological needs to be met. If I can't, I don't know where my next meal's coming from. I can't eat. And let me tell you, what happens after a detox is taking all of those things that all of us have right here and dropping it several notches down, because just detox alone causes you to throw up, lose all your nutrients, so you're coming in a whole different person just to begin with. So there's a lot around nutrition and physical activity I think is really, really important, and I'm not going to talk really about that today. That's a whole different area we could talk about. But there's challenges that women have when we promote trying to be healthier, and we have to talk about weight, and they want to talk about weight, or something like that. So let's see. I'm going to try to. I should have just put my notes on there. I don't have a ton, but okay. So what makes women different? What is that pathway? It's one that probably all of you know and have heard of. When you're talking about the Office on Women's Health defines trauma as physical and sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, substance use among family members, mental illness in the home, separation, divorce of parents, incarceration of a household member, having a mother who was treated violently. And so trauma is one of those things that brings the pathway, brings women to where they are. And we'll see this a little bit more. These are interesting. Childhood trauma, 1.2 to 1.5 times more likely to engage in substance use. And then if you look at people who are in substance abuse, then you find trauma is in that. So it's two different ways to look at it, but the data is the same. And by the way, I'm happy to share these slides with you if you don't feel like writing this stuff down and you just want to kind of engage. So please let me know if you want to do that. I'll put I think my email's up here at the end, and I can just send you the slides with the information. Okay, now this one is a little different. This is looking at the vast majority of incarcerated women also have that, which is, like I said, where I got my start, and I saw a lot of this going on. Recently, this is a study, let's see if this works. Does that work? Yeah, no, I guess not on the screen. This is a study that I'm just finishing right now where I looked at 40, I think I had about 70 that came online to complete it, and I ended up with 49 women through a snowball recruitment of commercial sex workers in the commercial sex industry, which a lot of people think they go into that because they make a lot of money and they must enjoy it, and they get assaulted, and of course they get assaulted. Look at the business you're in. And that's so far from the truth. And so I was really interested to learn more about their backgrounds. And just alone, that 70% of them had been sexually abused as an adult, 40% as a child, 64% had been physically abused as an adult, and 52% had been physically abused as a child. And so this is also very common in these women. And incidentally, they're not getting arrested for prostitution and for, you know, pandering or whatever. They're getting arrested for substance use disorder, or for using substances, and then they're put into treatment for substance use disorder. Because to live that life with this in your history is very difficult. And I talked to a police officer once that said, I always know when I go into a bar, the woman who is waiting for her John or whatever you want to call him, because she's drinking water and not alcohol. Because alcohol makes her sloppy and she can't do her job. And the only way she can do the job that she has to do to make the money to survive is methamphetamine or some other drug. So then she's disconnected from, you know, the neck up and just does what she has to do. So there's so much history behind women, and I've just been watching it for the last 30 years. And so I'm going to share a little bit with you, some of that with you today. Also, in terms of sexual and physical abuse, the data tells us that African American and American Indian, Alaskan Native women are also more likely than women of other race and ethnic groups to be victims of rape, physical violence, and stalking. You probably know this, that abuse is typically done by a partner, more so than a stranger, so intimate partners. And I think that's what this one. And so this is how women, and this is what the data shows us, and I don't have all of these referenced, that's why I'm happy to send you these, and then I'll make sure that they're referenced. Sometimes I forget. But there's lots of data that shows why women start using drugs in the first place is very different from men. That men, it's more typically with their peers, whereas women, it's more typically with the intimate partner. And from what I've seen, just personal experience, is a lot of them learned this from their mothers. It's especially methamphetamine, and the whole weight issue is passed down from moms to daughters as well. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I think you guys know this, but I just want us to make sure we're starting on the same foundation. Women are more likely to suffer from major depression, anxiety, PTSD, and then also have eating disorders. Comorbidities with that, by the way. So basically what this is saying is women are dealing with very, very complicated treatment issues. Yes?
So you have BN, is that bulimia nervosa?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, but this is bulimia, and then this would be a eating disorder more along the lines of anorexia.
Sure.
So yeah, I think we probably could have clarified that a little.
No, it made sense, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. And I have some studies that 60 to 75% of system-impacted women have co-occurring disorders. So it's really complicated. That's what I'm saying. It's not just a bad decision that they woke up with one. Sure, there are those. But it's really what they're bringing to what happened in their life, how they ended up in the courts, and then what they bring to their recovery is very, very complicated, very difficult. Oh, and this is the other thing, is reproductive. The average age of women in treatment is roughly 30, 35, if you average it out. And so they're facing some of these issues like related to the reproductive cycles. I would love to do a study on this menstrual cycle. I don't think I ever will because I'm getting old and running out of years to retire. But from what I saw when I was working in the prisons and working in the drug courts, women come in and some of their highest risk times of wanting to relapse, I will ask them, are you close to your period? Are you on? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, just hold on. Wait 4 days, and then come back and tell me you still want to use, and I'll turn away. And they never do, because it's such a high-risk time of how they feel about themselves and their body and their life. It just is the natural. And I would just be blown away, I'm sure, by how many women, when they relapse, how close it is to that time of their cycle. Also, the incidence of amphetamine and opioid right now is very, very big in delivering women, and polysubstance use, which we'll talk a little bit more in a minute. And then the last one I want to mention along these lines is social, what I call social capital. So some of these are things that, and again, when we talk about gender, we have to talk about biological, but then we also have to talk about cultural gender. So sometimes I use the word sex for biological and gender for cultural. A lot of these are very cultural or gender related, obviously not sex related. That women typically have, lower employment, lower income. They have to take care of children. I just watch these women in prison pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, they're taking me out. I'm delivering on Thursday. Can you please come there? And then I'll hear them say, please, we'll figure it out after. Just please say that you're going to take care of the child. I don't know. Maybe they don't do that anymore. Hopefully they don't, but that's how they did it in Nevada. Somebody had to be there to pick up the child. And so they were like, doesn't matter. I just want somebody to come and get my kid. So their moms, they have to figure this out, and that's going to add to their complications. And incidentally, social and legal fears are why they won't come into treatment to begin with. I mean, the rate of treatment to women and men is about 65 to 35 nationally. So if you look at that, if they know, if they say, if I come in and I tell you that I just want to self-enroll, right? That you're going to find out I have kids and then I'm going to lose them. So they're going to be the mama bears. I'm going to figure this out. I'll figure out what to do with my kids. I'll figure out how to deal with this problem that I have, but I'm not going to go into treatment. And we don't want that. And then when you get into recovery, then you have a whole new set of issues, right? I mean, and forgive me if I sometimes am a little bit blunt, but I've seen men come out of prison and jump in, contractors pick them up. They give them a hammer, they give them some tools, show them how to use them, paying them $35 an hour, and they're out there doing contract work, and they're like, yeah, I can do this. And then maybe getting, apprenticeships and things like that. But just to show up at the site, there's a lot of money for those jobs. And women, they won't take them out of those jobs. I don't know why. Hopefully we're doing better at that. I've seen women go out and start doing that. But if you're putting a woman in a job that's paying $13 an hour, and she's the caretaker, it costs her more to go to work than it does to stay home and not work. So it's super, super complicated when you look at it. They don't have family support. Mom and dad, brothers, sisters, like, hey, you chose this life, so, you're on your own. or they'll take their kids from them instead of work with them. Anyway, it gets really complicated, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this stuff. So I want to move now to specifically the role of gender in substance use disorder. And hopefully you guys can see these. I'm just going to kind of go through them. These are probably some of the most critical, and that's why I'll send you these slides. This is probably 20 to 30 years of data across probably 200 articles that I've compiled into these little data tables for you. But I want you to I'm just going to go through a couple of them because I want you to get an idea of how different this is. It's different biologically. We know that women use different drugs than men. We know that they use for different reasons. They relapse for different reasons. And drugs manifest themselves different in the female body than it does in the male body. So, for example, when compared to males, psychiatric problems and adverse consequences are more prominent in females. When compared to males, and this is a meth study, was associated with poor quality of life and mental health status in females. I think with men, I don't know the men data as well, with men it was associated with lower education, lower income, and lack of health insurance. Whereas for women it was poor quality of life and mental health. Meth use in women cause more symptoms of depression and PTSD, which I already mentioned. Females with meth use disorder suffer a higher prevalence of suicide ideation, and yet attempts at suicide are higher in younger females. And the data shows that males are actually more successful. So you might see higher suicide rates in men because their attempts are successful higher than women, but the attempts are higher in women, especially adult women. Meth-induced cognitive disorders are more pronounced in females. They have more issues than males do with decision-making, with concentration, with learning and memory. I mean, when we know this, it kind of makes you start saying, maybe we need to change the way we're doing it. And that's what I hope that you take away, not so much the data, even though I'll share it. Women exhibit more frequent meth withdrawal symptoms, including anxiety-like symptoms, hypersomnia, and psychomotor issues. And females experience higher frequency, which goes sort of along with that, of sleep problems and lower quality sleep than men do.
Perfect, doctor.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on how the meth itself caused the PTSD?
Well, on which one are you talking about?
The top right.
So it's meth, yeah, it's meth, it's studies on meth. Maybe I should have listed that one with, I tried to clarify these because when I talk about meth, I don't even put it in there. It may be females with meth use disorder had more symptoms. I'll check on that for you. Yeah, yeah. But to your point, there are some differences, and I'll show you a couple of examples of that when I get a little further into that part of it. Okay, let's see what else we got here. On this one, these are really interesting. Some of these are looking at during treatment that females, they found, are more likely to experience cravings, and that's both with methamphetamine, cocaine, and opioids. And I believe I've seen studies on all three. They're more likely to self-medicate. We talked about that. That's that mama bear. They're going to take care of it. They're going to figure it out. Related to opioid studies, they are more likely to be prescribed opioids by their physicians. And it's highest at the reproductive age. And that probably explains some of this, that the studies show that they are more likely to engage in doctor shopping. So you got the 35-year-old female, especially with opioids and methamphetamine, it tends to be more of the white women, suburban women. They're going to hustle their doctors. And they know people. They know doctors, and they get what they want. But worse than that is that the physicians here you go, physician biased, the physicians think that that woman is less risk than a black woman or a Native American woman. And so they look at them different, and so they'll more freely prescribe the opioids. It's wrong, but that's what they do. So it's a whole complication of all of this in terms of opioid prescription. When compared to males, problems related to jobs and family social relationships were more severe in females. Females with, this actually, the way the study was written is that males were much better at securing jobs. So I turned it around, may not be turned around correctly because of this, but males are better at securing jobs than women are, which I kind of mentioned that too. And females are more likely to respond to treatment and post-treatment outcomes, yet they're more likely to relapse. So there's an interesting, studies show that they relapse faster, but they respond to outcomes better. So maybe they're relapsing because we're not giving them the right tools to successfully respond to those outcomes. Okay, so research shows that gender responsive assessment, now I heard Carolyn mention that you have a women's assessment.
Yes.
Maybe have you used it? Yes, what is that?
It's called the WARNA, it's the Women's Risk Index.
Oh, okay, that's what I was gonna ask you.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of this data that I'm sharing with you came from Dr. Salisbury. She was my colleague at UNLV, even though I'm at UNR. I'm in Vegas, so all my students are from UNLV. And she's now at Utah. And I wasn't sure if you guys had invested in that. In fact,
We've used it for a lot of years now, about 19.
That's awesome. That's great. And the study that I did on the commercial sex industry, actually I took that WRNA and created the study from that. So it's a lot of the same information. But anyway, we know that it's much more effective at preventing recidivism. So, okay. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go through these things so that we can better understand these four things. So the first one is that women respond differently, women respond to drugs differently than men do. So here's an example, and I use this for an example because it's easy to understand. Sometimes with substance use, it's because they're all so different, it's not. But smoking is a perfect example. The differences are both biological as well as cultural. So gender or sex, as I had mentioned. Excuse me. So if you look at smoking, for example, they found that men respond better to pharmacological treatment. So patches and gum and things like that affect their systems, and that works on them. But women tend to not respond to that as well. And so things, they're a little bit more, their metabolism metabolizes like the active ingredient. And so what happens is it biologically, it doesn't work as well based on the metabolism. So they respond, on the other hand, better to sensory. And so when we look at helping women quit smoking, rather than just handle gums and patches and think it's going to work, you're better off working with the nose stimuli and the smell and the weight issues. They don't want to gain weight, the cultural issues. So it's very different. So it doesn't, and again, you can't say that won't work for any woman and this won't work for any man. So I hope we're all on the same page with that. These are what the studies are showing, that women respond better to those types of treatment, and they don't respond to the other. So this is the same way. If you look at some of these, and there's a study that just came out in April that I'm also happy to share with you that took what I've been talking about for 30 years, threw it into an epidemiology part of the paper, and then these guys from NIDA got a big NIH grant and looked at genetics and they looked more into rat studies. So there's really a lot of stuff coming out. Everything that I've done is more on the epi side, but there's some great data coming out, and the article is just amazing. If you want one really nice article that just tells you everything like this. So, but here's a couple things. Some of these are from that article, that when compared to males, females' first drug use more commonly was meth, and they tended to use at an earlier age than men, and typically more dependent. Women are less likely to switch to another drug when they can't get the methamphetamine. Some opioid studies show that they can use smaller amounts for a shorter period of time before becoming dependent. So that's why it happens so much quicker. Women are more vulnerable to the reinforcing effects of stimulants. They're more sensitive to meth-induced behavioral and subjective effects, so the faster reaction times, impulsivity. They're more likely to snort. Men are more likely to use injection. Females show heavier meth use based on urine samples. So they did a study looking at people coming in with methamphetamine in the emergency room. And they found when they looked at the urine samples that even though there was more men that came in for methamphetamine, the urine from the women showed heavier use, so higher. Women are more likely to experience chronic pain and use prescription opioid medications for longer periods and in higher doses. These studies have been out for a long time on the opioids. And then looking at poisoning cases, which we know is not necessarily an overdose, right? It's the wrong drug. It's the Russian roulette, the poisoning. Poisoning cases were lower in females over 20, but actually very high in girls 10 to 19. Again, we have to look at those things and think, what is the approach that we're using? Okay. So again, I'm not the expert on this. I'm just reporting what I've learned over the years. That we know that drugs manifest themselves differently in men and women, and so we have to look at that. Women use different drugs than men, and again, please chime in if you're like, well, in Montana, it looks like this, but I did do a little bit of my homework. So here's the TEDS data, the treatment episode data. Is that what it is? Anyway, this is the national registry that looks at admissions across the United States, which is what I like to focus on because, that's what we do here, right? We're looking at women coming in, not just what are women using, even though they're similar. So let's look at the admissions rate. So I mentioned before, if you look at the center, these are women and these are men. 65-35 is about right. So when you look at how many people are going into treatment for substance use disorder, 65% of them are men, 35% of them are women. So use this as sort of like your baseline, okay? So what this is saying that below here, all of these up here mean that men are using these drugs at a higher rate than women because these are lower. And women are using these drugs at a higher rate than the baseline on this side. So this is basically saying that women are using heroin, meth, and other opiates a lot more, and men are using alcohol, marijuana, and alcohol with another substance. And this data, unfortunately, has not changed. I updated from back in 2012, and 13, and 15, and 17, 19. It just hasn't changed. It's really the same thing. I could almost just change the year and see the same thing. But something unique about Montana when I looked up Montana. So remember, this is 65-35, right? And this is very common that we see much higher than 35% in almost every state in the United States, that women are a lot higher on these. Montana has a lot of females in treatment. Now you can speak up, honestly, and tell me that data's wrong. but that's what the data shows. 41% of admissions were women, 59 were men, and then, look at these. You're one of 4 states, let me think, or 5 states, Kansas, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, and Montana. The only 5 states in the United States where meth and other opiates, or particularly methamphetamine, actually exceeds.
But I'll bet we're higher in alcohol and, than other states.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, no.
Or just plain alcohol?
Alcohol.
For men or women?
For men.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's the offset.
That is pretty high, 70. So you're looking at 59% of admissions are men, but almost 70% of admissions are men with alcohol.
In Montana.
In Montana. Yes. I'll make sure I had the right one. So I think that you guys are right in line, if not worse, when it comes to women and methamphetamine. And you could be very right, because I haven't studied this side as much. But at a glance, and then look at this one, alcohol with another drug. So alcohol could very well be high. In fact, we could go back one again. I don't know why I did that. I'm confused on which computer. So yeah, this is across the U.S. So you guys are a little bit higher than that.
And I've
Okay,
seen-
yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah. With the population that I work with the women that I work with, I've seen that they tend to bounce kind of back and forth sometimes with the opiates and the meth.
Okay.
They're not necessarily
Yes.
committed to one
Yeah.
drug or the other.
Okay, so that's exactly what, that was a good, that's where we're going right now.
Oh,
So if you look at this data, this is a 10-year trend from basically the last 10 years, 2009 to 2019. So you can see alcohol, the one in the top, has actually come down. This is national, US, not Montana. Cocaine, come down a little bit. Marijuana has come down. Methamphetamine is this one here. It has not gone down. It has maintained slight increase. Opiates, massive increase. So what's happening is the whole drug trend is moving towards those two. And I honestly, as I saw opiates going up, because I collect this data in our women's prison, just as part of my research and our drug courts where we teach, and I'm seeing the same thing. So when I saw the opiates go up, I kept thinking, well, the meth must be going down. It never went down. It kept climbing even a little bit more, but it maintained, and then the opiates came up. So now what we have is basically exactly what you mentioned. Methamphetamine is still the biggest issue, but now we have a meth opioid is now my drug. The polysubstance is now my drug of choice. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Because they need energy to take care of the kids.
Exactly. So they offset their effect on the CNS system. One stimulates it and one calms it down. Each one fixes the pleasurable or unpleasurable side of or symptoms of the other one, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, if any of you are, have 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids, you understand why they need energy, and you have to look good. Like there's so many pressures, and we'll see those here in a second. But yeah, that's what's happening. So I'm not going to go through these, but the numbers are incredible. How much opioid has gone up in the last 10 years, almost 20 years. In 2019, methamphetamine surpassed opioids as the leading cause of overdose. And now we have the wrong, methamphetamine faced with fentanyl, so that adds to it as well. So here's what I'm saying. So on the left one, this is stimulant use, right? So you have cocaine, you have methamphetamine, relatively, that is meaningful, probably an error. This is methamphetamine. This is use in the past year. This was asking people, or I don't think it was people, this is just asking people like Ann Haynes or something.
Is that 2018?
Yeah, CDC, National Vital Statistics. What?
2018?
Yeah, it's 2007 to 2018.
Because
So
I
it's,
think since 2018 through 2020, there's been a very significant increase in methamphetamine use, particularly in the West.
yeah, so what you're saying is now this is even climbing.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But when they compared these two data, even when meth was over this first decade here, or almost 20 years, even when meth wasn't going up, the deaths related to meth were increasing because of the opioid. So clearly this is the problem, and you know, how they work synergistically. And I have a little bit of data I want to tell you because I think it's really important to know that since the pandemic, and to your point, since the pandemic, the problem has been exacerbated. And DHHS Millennium Health reported, since the pandemic, there's been a 23% increase in urine samples taken from healthcare and clinical settings testing positive for methamphetamine, a 19% increase in positives for cocaine, and a 67% increase in testing positive for fentanyl. And then one other thing, Quest Diagnostic found significant increases in fentanyl in combination with methamphetamine and cocaine during the pandemic. So the problem has just gotten worse. Whatever things we were doing to make it better, it just took a dive in 1920.
And
Yes.
I would guess that suicide rate is a result of the fentanyl and the methamphetamine combination.
Yes. And I almost am sure I just saw some data on that yesterday, and especially with women, that's one of the high rates of them. Their suicide attempts are related to this. You can probably teach us better than me. You know this stuff. But it's so nice to know that you know, that we're understanding this, that the message is getting out. Because I'll tell you, the first, you know, when I started this, people just kind of pat me on the head and go, "Good job, Annie. You know, that's good data, but that's only a few girls." I'm like, it's not. It's like my data is showing that this is a huge problem. Yes.
So I work in Sydney. I'm an addiction counselor, and we have a contract with the hospital, the place I work at. And when we go in for consults, your stats on Montana are almost to a T. I hardly ever see women in there for alcohol withdrawal. It's usually men.
Yeah.
I would say 90% of the time. And more women are coming in for the methamphetamine withdrawals.
Yeah.
And it just depends on which day, which doctor is working, because there are some that will not admit them and there are others that will. And anytime anyone comes in the ER with any issue, they automatically order a UA, like the blood screen, whatever it is. And recently, I've had 3 clients come to me and say that they've told their doctor they're an addict and they don't want pain medicine. One of them specifically said Toradol worked better for him and he wouldn't abuse it, like they could just give him a Toradol shot. The doctor still shot him up with fentanyl in the ER to close up a wound that could have easily
They don't
been
ask. I can testify to that. I had a mountain bike accident last July, broke 12 bones in my body. All of these, a bunch of ribs, and completely restructured my shoulder.
And then that sent him into a tailspin.
Yes.
Because it took him 2 weeks to
Yes.
get through the withdrawal symptoms of that. And then he's fallen off the wagon since then. We're trying to...
Because they don't ask.
Yep.
And that's what I was laying in the hospital, in the ambulance, and he said, "Are you feeling better?" And I'm like, "No, I'm really in bad pain." He goes, "Well, you should feel better any time now. I just shot you up with fentanyl." I go, "Maybe you could have asked me." I wasn't going to get into it like that because I was really in pain.
And the guy I knew said the last thing he told him was the second time, I'm an addict in recovery, I do not want fentanyl, opiates for my drug of choice. And he says he remembers telling him that, and then he was like out. He was asleep.
I don't want to sidetrack things. in my chart, I have that I'm allergic to opiates and narcotics because I'm in recovery. And that's kind of what I suggest when I'm, for the people I'm working with. Tell your doctor you're allergic to it. Don't tell them you're necessarily in recovery because they don't want a malpractice lawsuit.
But again, if you're talking about emergency room, ambulances, they're not looking at your records yet.
Yeah.
I do like that though. That is good.
So-
That helps a lot, and we need a better system for that. Yes.
I was interested in your comment about, because it's the first time I heard it, that women experience cravings more than men do.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Again, I'm more of an epidemiologist, so I report the data, but I've seen that data on both opioids and methamphetamine. And possibly cocaine, but for sure methamphetamine, opioids, because that's what I studied the most. Different studies that both said that. But again, it might be explained better in that article, because they get into a lot of genetics, which is, you know, I'm basic genetics. This gets in kind of out of my league. And they're doing all these rat studies, and that's where they're seeing this.
I wonder if it's biological because of weight and
Body fat,
body fat.
yeah.
And then the next question to follow that up is, does that mean then that medically assisted treatment would be more important for a woman to reduce cravings than perhaps in a male population?
Yes. So, and I don't want to get into this either because this was very controversial, but I met somebody here in Montana last night who's working with a program to, like, kiosks that they're doing in Montana where they're allowing women to take their, like, their pain opioids or whatever through a kiosk. They live in these rural areas because instead of driving 3 hours to see their doctor, they're not going and then they're getting them illegally. And that was exactly her premise. I said, well, so what are they doing about helping with the addiction part? And she said, well, her role is not that, but her hope is that when women are managing it better, that then we can start working on, like you said, if we figure out how to manage the cravings, manage the pain, that they have higher levels of pain, you know. And I'm open to those kind of discussions. I've never really gone down that road, but that if we manage that pain, then we can start to do that, or we manage those cravings, but as long as they're there, it's not going to do any good. So I guess there's a lot of discussion about that and ways that that could be done, so I don't know. And I don't know if I agree or not.
I'm very intrigued by that because in Sydney, we're rural and we have within driving distance, there's at least 3 different places about an hour, hour and a half away in a radius where you can get Suboxone. But most of our clients just get it on the street. $100
Yeah.
a strip, you shoot it up, you get high.
Yeah.
And half the people that are taking it regularly don't have scripts for it.
Yeah, I
It's
guess they're like
ridiculous.
likening it to, like, you know, blood pressure medication. Let's manage it and then let's work on better eating, better, you know, exercise, but let's get it under control first. So let's manage it. And so she's doing these kiosks. Actually fascinating. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this because I guess it's just a brand new business called Opio, I think. And they go to the kiosk once a day for their treatment, and it takes a picture, and infrared shows that it went down, and they didn't try to save it and sell it.
That's pretty cool.
So, I learned something new when I was up here.
That's really awesome. I wish they would have started that when they first started medication
Well,
assisted
the
treatments.
business is here in Montana, they're
Yeah.
unrolling it here. But, you know, my thing, again, it's just like, you know, whether you, prostitution, you decriminalize it, you do alternative sentencing, or put them in jail, that's a whole controversy that I'm not gonna get into. My thing is, if you're decriminalizing it, or you're doing alternative sentencing, or putting them in jail or prison, what are you doing to help them? Because they have a lot of issues, and that's the bottom line for me, as a public health person. Okay, so the last two, we kind of talk about them together. Women use for different reasons and relapse for different reasons. And this study goes back, this was one of the seminal studies that to this day is still reported in 2004 about why women use. It was done by Brecht at the UCLA Integrated Substance Use Center in 2004, so almost 20 years ago. And it's probably been cited a million times because we're seeing it. And every study that I did matched this exactly. So what she did is she looked at all the reasons that people use methamphetamine, and the orange one is the females, the blue one is the males. The ones that I've pointed out are ones where there's a big discrepancy. Okay, not necessarily the ones where it's the highest, like this one. Those are pretty close. The ones where there's a big discrepancy, and for women it's weight loss and energy, and for men it's work more in an enhanced sexual experience. But that's why they're using. Again, we need to know that when we're treating them, because the rest of what we're talking about today is this. If this is a big issue why women are using these, we need to understand and know what to do with that. Loss of appetite, they reported loss of appetite, this is what the drug did for them. Loss of appetite, elevated metabolic functioning, less exhaustion, coping with pain, self-treat mental health, and elevated mood. What woman in America doesn't want those things? I mean, what man doesn't want those either, right? But I mean, if I had a nice little pill that gave me all that, it'd be hard to turn down too. So knowing that many female clients use these substances for decreased weight and increase, what concerns might derail their treatment plan? What's that?
Weight gain.
Weight gain. Do you guys hear that much?
Yes.
The women come in and they're saying, I've gained weight. We need to work with our judges, our corrections officers, our parole officers. When they're making those comments to women, I've seen it in the courtroom. The judge says, why did you relapse? And she goes, I gained like 40 pounds when I got off of it. And he's like, really? So you're telling me you lost your kids, you're sitting in jail, you're facing prison time, and because you got fat? And he humiliates her, and every other girl in the room goes, I'm not telling him that. There's no way I'm bringing that up. This is for real. Like, who are we to judge and say that's why? That's dumb. That's not a good reason. I need a better one. Yeah.
And then what we're seeing is, if that does happen, not necessarily like that, but a lot of our female clients are usually co-occurring disorders, and so then they find out which doctor prescribes fentanyl.
Exactly.
Or they're now getting Vyvanse, and
Exactly.
they get the high of Vyvanse, and so they're going to their doctor, racing thoughts, whatever, and the doctor
They're
prescribes
hustling
Vyvanse.
their doctors.
Yeah.
They're saying, oh, that drug you take, you're not gaining weight from that mental health for depression. What is it? Oh, Topamax? Oh. Then they go to their doctor and they say, that drug you gave me, it's making me sick. I throw up all the time. Do you have anything else like Topamax? You know, oh yeah, we can try that. Score. I mean, that's what they do. Or they don't, you put them on mental health medications, not taking them, I'm gaining weight. It affects their medication plan. It's just, and we can't ignore it. We can't turn it down. I see corrections officers saying to women like, oh, look at you since you came in, gained a few pounds, huh? And I'm like, really? You just said that? Or a parole officer?
Well, and then as a treatment court, we tell them, follow the recommendations of your doctor.
Yes.
So sometimes we don't know what they're saying to the doctor.
Yes.
We're just like, go ahead, keep taking it. It's great, it's working great, you're losing weight.
Yes.
But are you requiring them to tell their doctor that they're in drug court and that,
Yep,
and they're still prescribing?
yep.
Well, saying we're requiring it and them doing it may be different.
We have to make the doctors sign off on a form that shows that they've informed their provider that they are in treatment court. And then a release.
Okay, so I want to talk about these three things because these are the things that are causing the recycle and the relapse. They're very interconnected. Weight concerns, individuals, especially women, newly absent from stimulants, tend to gain weight. Gaining weight affects their body image, And body image is the strongest predictor for eating pathology, and these are all self-medication ways, and unfortunately, they all lead back to substance use again. So I want to look at these a little bit. And I mentioned this, but I want to reiterate. Women's weight status is not just a metric of their health. It's often conceptualized a metric of their self-worth and their societal value. When a man leaves them, the other girl must have been thinner. You know, when he left me, it's probably because I was overweight. You know, I didn't get the job because for some reason, they can't just say, screw him, that was his problem. He left somebody great, you know. It always somehow goes back to how it looked. And, you know, society, that's what we put so much emphasis that you can't be surprised at that, right? So I want to show you a little bit of data because, you know, when you look at, this was a study I did in 2012 with almost 300 women in treatment for substance use disorder, and we asked them these questions. 71% said they were concerned about weight and recovery. 45% said it could trigger a relapse, and a third of them said, I'm concerned I'll use when I get out. I'll just do that meth diet and then I'll get back to my plan because that's the only way I know how to lose weight. And a third of them started using because of that and continue to use because of that. And this was across 7 substance use centers, 4 outpatient, and 3 residential. So my question is this legit? And the answer is yes. So this is a study I did in 2015 on women in our Nevada prison. Now, these are women with substance use disorder. 87% of our population had substance use disorder, mostly methamphetamine. So it really is the same population, okay? Look at 35%. This is compared to a non-prisoner community sample. 35% were overweight, 38% were obese. The range we saw, weight gain was from over 3 years, was 18 pounds to 98 pounds over 42 months. So it's for real. And I can get into that, but a lot of it has to do with, in fact, I think I have a slide, so let me just show you that in a second. Because we actually teach them and help them with that. So what role, I want to mention this too, it's not women who are thin who have this problem or women who are overweight. So forget about that. BMI studies show if you're higher, you have a problem, and if you're lower. Higher ones may exhibit more depression and emotional eating around it. I'll never get there. Lower ones may rank themselves higher on these scales and say, I'm sure I can get there. I'll just keep trying. So we really just put that out of your mind that it has to do with weight, because it does not. It has to do with this, what we call drug use expectancies, where women believe that using a drug will make them more attractive. So these are the things that we address in our treatment center, in our programs that we do. So I kind of stole this from our Healthy Steps to Freedom program, where we show them that when they were using the methamphetamine, their body was like a dried up sponge, right? One of those ones you find under the sink and you go to use it and it like crumbles because they have impaired metabolism, and that is simply because of the drug. As soon as they stop using the drug, their metabolism plunges and it takes a while to get it back up. But it will come up, and we teach them how to do that. They lose a lot of fat that they need. They have decreased muscle and organ size. We also see dehydration, muscle found lean mass due to alcoholic myopathy, by the way, for muscle disease. And then loss of bone density. So methamphetamine depletes the absorption of calcium in a human body for everybody. That's why your teeth fall out, hair falls out, all those things, right? Imagine what that's doing to their bones. And it's making them thinner. because they're degrading, or and then, so what we want to do is move them towards recovery, means bring my metabolism up, increase my healthy needed fat stores, rebuild muscle and organ tissues. All organ tissues are muscle tissue. Rebuild bone density, most of them can because they're still young. So we really promote high calcium foods
But as you're
and
saying.
rehydrate the body.
Then paired also with age is.
Yes.
That in.
It does get harder at 40, 50, 60. But, you know, there's still a lot that can be done. So,
So are you gonna tell us how you do those things?
well, I'm telling you the things that we talk about. I will tell you that I have a curriculum that's a 10-week curriculum that I address all of these. And I can work with you guys on getting that curriculum to you. I don't generally charge for the curriculum because I rather train people on how to use it. And then if it's outside of Nevada, I just have to charge for my time. But we can talk about that.
But is it exercise, is it what you eat, what is it?
Yes,
that you
it's all of
do?
those. So we talk about exercise and increasing exercise. I'm going to show you a couple of those
Okay.
towards the end here. Come some of the highlights. But yeah, this is what we need to be talking about. The second one I mentioned was body dissatisfaction, disliking one's physical appearance. Okay? This is a study I did when I was out of the prison, and we found that this was a huge body dissatisfaction in these women in the prison. So we're seeing this. I thought, you know, when you go into women's prisons, you see, you know, people with things rolled up, and that's like a style. They're still doing styles in prison. And when the warden catches on, they're like, nope, can't roll up your pants anymore, can't do whatever. Fads over exercise. So we're seeing them try to correct this stuff themselves. But I really thought it was just Nevada women. Because it's Las Vegas, right? But it wasn't. This problem is everywhere. We're seeing it. This was another one I did 10 years later and showed that these women have increased body dissatisfaction. They have higher body shape preoccupation, and they endorse those drug expectancies. So I'm not getting into these. I just want you to know this is real. This isn't just something that we're saying happens. So what message would you promote for clients who struggle with body dissatisfaction? What's the message? What do you think that we should help them accomplish? What would be the major message?
So I worked at inpatient for women for 9 months, and I did a 8 weeks body group. And one of the biggest messages we started with, we looked at what messages that society was giving people, what messages their families had given them. We started there so that they could see that those parts. Plus there was some body dysmorphia, so we addressed like what you really look like, what you're really seeing. And I felt that that was a good place to start with some of that.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen them go all the way down to having them lay on butcher paper
We did
and
that.
trace each other.
Yeah, we did
and they
that.
get up and they go, oh.
It's huge. Yeah.
Like, I thought it was like this big, and
Yeah.
it's like, that's me, yep, that's you. So there is a lot of things you can do, depending on how detailed you want to do. The curriculum that I have more hits on all of these, each thing once a week. But there are some good body curriculums out there. I think Tom Cash does a lot of really good stuff, and he has some workbooks on that. So, but here's the major message that I think that we need to help women when it comes to body dissatisfaction. Women who hate their bodies, you're never going to get them to love their bodies. Some women who love their bodies don't really love their bodies. They hate their bodies. You see it on social media all the time. Look at this. It's just their way, or they make jokes about their body. It's their way of saying, I don't really like my body, so I'm going to let the world know that it's no big deal. So neither one of these really ever happen. But if you can get somebody to a place where they don't wake up every day and go, look in the mirror. There's some really funny studies on, not funny, but how many times women look in the mirror in a day versus men. If you can get a woman to a place where she's not thinking about her body all the time. Am I the thinnest one in the room? Does this shirt look okay? Is my jacket just right? There's so many things that we think about all day long. And if we can get to the place where we're not thinking about our bodies and how they look, that's success right there. And then the last one is eating pathology, which really comes from dieting. It's a self-medication for the weight gain that comes with binging, with eating disorders. So this is kind of how the pathway to it. They often develop during recovery, and this is men and women, when they come into recovery, methamphetamine affects their satiety cues. So your satiety cue might be telling you, it's 5 o'clock, I'm getting hungry. You know this. You don't have to look at your clock to go, how long ago did I eat? I should be hungry now. But they do. Their satiety cues are messed up. They don't know when they're hungry. They don't know when that's part of how a drug affects their system. And so they end up overeating, binge eating, compensatory behaviors, which lead to unhealthy dieting practices, poor eating behaviors, into full-blown eating disorders. And so we have to, one of the things you've got to take away from your treatment discussions is dieting. Don't talk about diets on the internet. Don't talk about when people say, hey, I just started the keto diet, whatever. Don't entertain that. These diets are just making the problem worse. We should be talking about diet. Not to mention that dieting is the addict mentality of the quick fix, give me something to fix this. And so it's sending them back to relapse. So here was the study we did in 2012 on the same population I mentioned earlier. These were the methods that women had used for weight loss. And I'm not going to go into them because you can see them there yourself. But you can see clearly that methamphetamine was the number one, and then diet pills was number 2. All the way down, even energy drinks. Side note, ban energy drinks from your treatment centers. They are so harmful to the stimulant user. They are a gateway drug, and there's a lot of data to support it. Not to mention, energy drinks are not regulated by the FDA. They're not a food or drink, and they're not a drug. They're in that in-between where all the diet pills are, and none of them are regulated by the federal government until somebody dies. Or enough people complain that there's something wrong. Like fen-phen, remember that? So, dieting, energy drinks, don't have them.
Doctors, is the concern the same across the board for married versus non-married and child-bearing versus non-child-bearing age groups?
For what I was just talking
Yeah,
about?
for the concerns with weight loss.
Oh, yeah. It's not just single women, yeah. Oh, yeah, and it's sometimes even worse, because if the marriage isn't working and things aren't working, the brain says it must be me. It must be how I look. I wasn't this enough. And the 10th lesson in the curriculum that we have, and again, I'm not promoting this because I don't even charge for it, but the 10th lesson is cognitive distortive thinking around exactly that. So, symptoms of eating disorder. This shows you 8% of our women stated that they had an eating disorder. 3% of American women claim to have, so it's higher. And symptoms of disordered eating, these are self-reported. 16%, if you ask on the streets women, 16% will say I have disordered eating, so some of us in here probably have those. 35% in that population have symptoms of disordered eating. So it's real, it's happening, and those are just what they're self-reporting. So when you really kind of dig into that, it gets even worse. And incidentally, you probably know this, but I can't not tell you that eating disorders are the mental illness with the highest mortality and death rate of any mental illness. I'm not saying more people die from it, I'm saying once you get it, the chances of dying from it are greater than any other mental illness. And then this is interesting because what we found when we did these are all psychology validated tools we used. This one is for bulimia. Not only did they have higher rate, these are all significance, showing that it was significantly higher in all these areas. But I wanted to point this out, is it was more severe. So a cutoff score of 20, only 5% of our comparison group had a score higher than 20, but 20% here. And the same thing with binge eating. So significantly higher binge eating in this population, but also a cutoff score of 17 says you're a binge eater. 39% were higher than 17, only 16% in the control or comparison. And severe binge eaters is higher than 26, 16% versus 5. So all that to say, not only is it more of a problem, but it's more severe, which doesn't surprise me. Going back to the addictive mentality. If something works, keep doing it more, right? So that's why it ends up being very severe. So this is what I want us to be careful of. Do any of you have dietitians in your facilities that work with your clients? No. They're expensive, and they're not always the answer. There are groups that you can do, simple information that I can share with you that you can utilize for group discussions or whatever. But we have to be really careful. If you send them to a gym, send them to an exercise science physiologist, send them to a dietitian, and they're obsessed with what they're talking about. Okay, so let me see your eating plan. Can you imagine what this is doing to this girl? Let me see what you're eating. Okay, well that's a high protein, but that's not this, right? All we want to teach them is a balanced meal. Because foods high in carbohydrates affect serotonin, give them energy. Foods high in fats reduce depression and anxiety. Foods high in fiber, really good, because people that have opioid issues have frozen bowels, right? That's what the opioids do. That's why, and so they need fiber. I mean, the list goes on how nutrition can really just healthy, balanced, simple, my plate, teach them how to eat right. And they don't know. And they need to rebond with their families. And so it can be a family thing. Teach them to cook with their families and things like that. And by the way, you guys anybody work with the SNAP Ed agency in Montana? Because SNAP, not the SNAP agency, but the SNAP education has basic nutrition for low-income people that they can come out and teach your people. And the federal government spends $400 million a year giving it to all the states. So I can hook you up with, I know folks at the extension over there in Montana as well, so we could see about maybe getting, and this curriculum that I developed is on the SNAP Ed toolkit as a legit curriculum. So they can come in and teach this stuff. But just be careful, because we can do more harm than good, and we don't want to do that. Dieting frequency, I'm not going to go into these just out of lack of time, but I want you to know that dieting causes severe, let me see what number I'm on. I think we're getting close. Severe frequency of severity of eating, it increases their symptoms, causes depression, negative self-esteem. Dieting helps them. They can't discriminate between their moods. Dieting affects their moods directly. The research shows how it affects their moods, and they can't discriminate their moods when they're dieting. They feel ineffective, insecure. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust food. Exercise addiction. Distrust goes into interpersonal relationships. Affects impulse control. These are all things that we're in treatment. We're saying, let's work on impulse control. Let's work on mood disorder. Let's work, and they're dieting, and you don't know it, and they can't even do that because it does some severe damage to the brain, the dieting does. Not to mention they're not getting the nutrients they need, because dieting means that they're cutting something out, and they need fiber, they need protein. Protein is the main neurotransmitter. You want to talk about stimulants and dopamine? Low protein is going to hurt that. And then I mentioned this already, but let me tell you a couple numbers on this that are fascinating. They did a study and looked at how many people coming into treatment had poor nutrition. 88% had deficiencies. 50% had basically a diagnosis they needed an RD, and 24% really needed hospitalization, complete total nutrient deficiency. It's really critical that they're eating healthy and they're not dieting and they're not picking some kind of food plan. Simple MyPlate, you can get it on the website, USDA MyPlate, simply all those categories, make sure their foods are colorful, they're getting all of they're not saying no carbs for me, no protein for me, extra protein for me. That's just harming them. And they've also found that a balanced diet actually helped display reduced scores on cognitive, so it actually improved their mental health, whereas very low-calorie diets, they found issues with self-esteem, body image, mood fluctuations. So these very low restrictive diets are just fueling the problem. So this is what we promote: healthy lifestyle, not weight, get off the scale, healthy body image, positive body talk. Especially these are moms. I mean, I could spend days, I could do an entire week-long workshop on this with moms and little girls. And they grew up with that. And when they look in the mirror and they go, "Mommy's fat," her little girls go on, "Am I fat?" It doesn't mean I'm worried, it means I want to be like mommy. And so if mommy starts to learn to say, "Look at mommy, doesn't she look good?" Then the little girl says, "Me too, do I look good? Yeah, aren't we amazing?" Like just changing that negative talk to positive talk. I'm using the USDA MyPlate for creating balanced meals, nutrient quality. We never say no. Don't ever say don't eat this, not going to eat this, forbidden foods, all part of the sickness. We need to say, look for foods that have high nutrient. Add to your diet. Like instead of say, don't eat this, don't eat that, say, how many fruits have you had today? None. Ooh, let's go get one. Let's just add a fruit today. Let's add a vegetable. Because you add those things, it's going to change the quality without, taking away things. And then physical activity, I want to show you one thing on that. So be careful of calorie counting. If your people are doing that, discourage calorie counting, discourage calorie burning. I get on the treadmill and I burn as many calories as I can because I got to lose weight or because I ate bad last night, so today I got to do extra. That's fueling that brain. Stay away from obsession with food label. I tell them, look at the food label to see if it's like something you should eat all the time or just once in a while. And then once you know that, you don't need to look at the food label of cookies. You just eat them once in a while. But if you're not sure, like a granola bar, look at the label and figure it out. So we teach them how to do that, but then we say get rid of it. Phone apps, very dangerous. Clean eating. This is a terrible word and terrible in this community. Don't call it clean eating. That's language we want to get rid of. Scale watching and extreme step goals. Let me show you. This is my exercise science career in a nutshell. This was the best study ever done by Bernard and his team. In 2018, let me give you the numbers. They looked at 8,000 adults between 20 and 80, self-reported mental health scores. And they looked at light, moderate, and steps. And I'm not going to show you the light and moderate, I'm just going to show you the steps because those are the ones you're most familiar with. How many steps do they tell you should take every day? 10,000. That's all we hear. And I'm a fellow in the American College of Sports Medicine, which makes this determination, okay? So I'm not bad-mouthing it, but it's not working. Because people can't do that, and so they don't do it at all. And the ones that can will obsess over it, and they'll walk around in circles at night until they hit that 10,000. Right?
It's true.
That means something's in my brain telling me to do that. So this is what they found. And if you take anything away about exercise, this is it. They found, they did a mental health score. I think it was called a global, let me write it down. Global something assessment, mental health score. And they found that in the first 5,000 steps, we saw the most significant increases in mental health. It didn't happen much after 5,000, so who cares? Don't be pushing people to do 10,000 steps. Let me give you an example. From my bedroom to my kitchen and back is 60 steps, right? 30 this way, 30 this way. You can get it quick. But when I go to work and I sit at my office all day on the computer and I walk to the bathroom however many times and I don't do anything else and I don't exercise that day, just walking to my car, going to the bathroom, I can get pretty close to 5,000. Somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000. If I throw in a 15-minute walk on the treadmill, I can get closer to 8,000. And if I really work at it, or on a Saturday when I'm cleaning, doing dishes, doing laundry, I can get 10,000 easy. So don't obsess over the numbers. Basically what I'm saying is, if you can get somebody off the couch to walk to their mailbox, or to do 2 minutes a day, just get out. You will actually see an improvement in their mental health scores. And I love this classic study in neuroscience. This is what happens after 20 minutes of sitting. This is the scale, right? This is the most brain activity after 20 minutes of walking. Fascinating. So not only does it help you health-wise, but it helps their brain. You guys have been sitting a long time, which is shame on me for doing this, but a lot of information. If I come all the way up here, I'm going to give you everything I can before I go back home. But this sitting, it's turning your brain into this. The minute you get up and start moving around, your brain will start. So how do you expect people to come in? And the last thing I want to show you, this guy, have you ever heard of him, Melanus? Mm-hmm. I noticed that this guy, I don't know who he is, but I've seen, when I look at substance use, like websites, centers, I see this information on almost everybody's website. And what he said was the first 30 days, the relapse rates are terrible in the first 30 days. And they're even worse in the first year. It's like 80% within the first year. Our numbers are not very good. But he said the first thing that happens is people emotionally relapse, then they mentally and physically. Emotional is the withdrawal. It's that basic, my needs aren't being met. They're coming into your group and they're sitting like this. And you're like, they don't care. They're not interested. That is not true. They're coming in like this because they haven't eaten right, they don't have any nutrients in their body, they're not exercising, their brain is just tired. It has no, what we saw on that last slide. And so to me, and they'll do this to me, they'll tell me, oh, we'll let them do their program when they get to phase 4. Because that's something special they can do in phase 4 of their treatment. I'm like, no, we need this in phase 1. We need to start eating better, being more active, paying more attention to how we feel about our bodies, all these things in the first phase. Then he says they relapse in the first phase within the first 30 days. Then they do the people places thing, which Caroline mentioned, and they start to compromise. Well, that's okay. I know that I don't want her to watch my kids because she's using all the time, but she never uses in front of my kids, so it's okay. I'm gonna let her watch my kids while I go to work. And the compromise starts. And so that's when they start to change. And the final relapse is the cross addiction, which is what we've been talking about, the eating pathology, all this stuff that turns into lapse and relapse. And if you look at post-acute withdrawal, these are the signs of post-acute withdrawal. This is what they're dealing with in the first 30 days of their treatment. So that's what we need to be addressing with men and women when it comes to nutrition and being physically active. Because all of those things will affect all of these things. It will change it all if they're more active and they're getting better nutrients in their system, which are completely depleted at this point because of the detox. So to summarize, overweight, obesity, lack of physical activity, poor nutrition, weight concerns, all of these lead to self-medication, including illicit drug use, which leads to relapse. So we need gender responsive. I mentioned this before. This is what you can do, and I'll tell you that there's a lot of studies on it now. They did a group, nutrition abuse education was offered in substance use treatment programs. They used something called Addiction Severity Index. Are you familiar with that, ASI?
Yeah.
And they found that 68%, they improved, scores improved 68% in psychological, 56% in medical, simply by doing group nutrition education. It's going to help clients with the things that cause them to go back to doing much more severe and self-medicating type things. This is the, oh, and they've also, I read a study on how nutrition counseling helped, how dietary intervention reduced recidivism. There's a lot of studies on just simply helping them eat better. This is the program that I do. It's called Healthy Steps to Freedom. Usually what I do is put people through something like an hour and a half once a week for like 8 weeks and go through all of these to really help them understand. You could teach it without that, especially if you guys, because you're starting to understand some of this, so we probably could release it. I just don't like giving it to people who then start twisting the content and don't understand what they're trying to do. So that's my biggest thing, is making sure people understand what they're teaching, why they're teaching. But it's very laid out on what to teach. And there's 10 separate sessions, like one on body dissatisfaction. If you just wanted to do one as a workshop and say, hey, my next group, we're just going to talk about body dissatisfaction. Can you send me that one little workshop so I can ask questions and show them slides and talk about it?
Are you training treatment providers, or who are you training?
Yes. So I've trained everybody from clinical directors to peer counselors. But also, SNAP Education, they already have the nutrition background. They're just not always as familiar. So now I've been teaching SNAP educators that know nutrition, but they don't know how to work with this audience. So it's two worlds that don't talk, because nutrition educators can harm this process if they don't understand the audience, and people in your field can harm them if they don't understand what to teach, and you're allowing dieting and energy drinks and going, well, at least they're not drugs. So it's where these two worlds come together, and it's very difficult, but we're getting there. There's another guy named David Weiss, I think, W-I-S-S, out of California, has a PhD, I think in psychology and nutrition. He's also developed a program with these. I think he charges for the program, but he has some resources. University of Kentucky, I think, has a program, just a general nutrition program to teach in recovery. But I would recommend either teaching the basic nutrition and addressing these topics and being aware of it, or having somebody come in and teach, but make sure that you're there. Because a good nutrition person should not be talking about diets, but you never know these days, people who call themselves nutritionists. If they're an RD, they probably won't, but they're expensive. So anyway. So I know I kind of flew through that at the end, a lot of information, we're past the time. I'll hang out if you guys have questions. Here is my information